The stage is set for Super Bowl 60, who's joining Bad Bunny and Green Day in Santa Clara. Plus, the Steelers just hired their fourth head coach since the merger. Will he last as long as his predecessors? We'll talk about it here on the Grey Duck NFL Show. Welcome everybody to the Grey Duck NFL Show. I am your host, Josh Kolodziejski, and we are going to dig into a bunch of things here on a beautiful Monday morning post-conference championship weekend. We've got two teams headed to the Super Bowl, and we'll talk about their path to getting there and identify what those teams were throughout the course of this day's show. We're also going to talk about a new head coach with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and a curious name has been added to the AFC Pro Bowl roster. All that and more here on the Grey Duck NFL Show, but we would be remiss if we did not talk about the biggest thing from this weekend, and that is the conference championship games on Sunday. And we're going to start things off first over in Mile High City, where the Denver Broncos and New England Patriots played 2.5 quarters of football before a snowstorm took the rest of the game out of the players' hands for the most part. New England coming away with a 10-7 win over the Denver Broncos. They are returning to the Super Bowl for the first time since the 2018 season. Good for them, good for the fans of the New England Patriots who have not seen a Patriot Super Bowl appearance. They're almost into their teenage years, and they finally get to witness their team be good once again. And let's just talk about this game a little bit and everything that went on, where the first two drives, both of these defense showing up really, really nicely. And I think it was telling how much trust Sean Payton had in Jarrett Stidham on the first series of play calls on that initial drive. Whereas, after announcing Bo Nix's injury following the divisional round win over Buffalo last weekend, we could hear Sean Payton say to a reporter who asked about Jarrett Stidham, Payton responded, "Just wait, you'll see." Unfortunately, words are one thing, actions are another, and when you run the ball for no gain on the first two plays of the game, and then go and put your quarterback in a third and long situation, it shows me you probably do not trust him as much as that confidence showed earlier in the week, because they go no gain run, and then Jarrett Stidham, getting pressured out of the pocket, has to throw a prayer on third down, and it's a 3-and-out, and they punt the ball away. And that was kind of the tone of the game towards the ending part, but Jarrett Stidham did respond after that drive. I just thought the play calling right away for someone that there was so much supposed confidence for by the coaching staff with Stidham, you'd think maybe you'd let him rip it a little bit earlier on in that game and on that first drive to establish himself and to prove your confidence to be correct. Instead, you probably put him in the worst possible situation, and you could say, well, it was to set up play action later in this game, but they did not set up play action hardly at all. I think I remember hearing Tony Romo and Jim Nantz say at some point late in the third quarter that this is the first play action play that the Broncos have run. So it wasn't even to set up play action to make his job easier. It was, we don't trust Jarrett Stidham to not make a catastrophic mistake on this opening drive, so we are going to play as conservatively as possible. Now, that game plan did not necessarily last long, because on the second drive, the Denver Broncos get the ball, and on a third down and long, get a perfect play drawn up, and it was kind of this series where both Christian Gonzalez and Jalen Hawkins, who each top players at their position, not the top players, but some of the top players at both cornerback and safety, they get confused a couple of times during this drive, and I'm not exactly sure if it had to do with coverage, miscommunication between the two of them, But Sean Payton designs this really nice play to get a long pass to Marvin Mims in one-on-one coverage against Christian Gonzalez. And in order to make sure that you are getting Christian Gonzalez in one-on-one coverage, as good as Christian Gonzalez is, you have to find a way to occupy the safety, because New England was in a too-high shell. You have to find a way to occupy the safety that is next to Christian Gonzalez, and in this case, that was Jalen Hawkins. And the way that Sean Payton decided to draw this up was to put his all of his receivers except for Marvin Mims on the left side of the offensive formation. So he's got a running back in the backfield in a shotgun formation lined up next to the quarterback to his left. It puts a tight end on the left. It puts a slot receiver and then an outside receiver on the left. You get the idea. Because the Patriots use a lot of split field coverage, and because typically a team's rules in split field safety coverage, when going up against a 3-by-1 set, or in this case, a 4-by-1 set, if you count the running back as one of those receivers, is to lock down the cornerback who has just one receiver going up against him, to lock those two down one-on-one so it is man no matter what. In more even sets, that outside cornerback will read the first man or second man, depending on the coverage, and figure out who he is picking up as soon as that read is made. In this case, it is just one-on-one. No matter what, you are following this guy everywhere because you might be the only one on this side of the field, depending on how the routes develop on the strong side. And that is because in the split field coverage, that safety that is alongside that cornerback on the lonesome side of the field is first going to check to see if there are any crossing routes coming his way from the slot receiver on the side to his opposite, because in that case, the other safety, who is on that strong side of the field, can pass that receiver over to the weak side safety, who now has an angle to wall off any potential play and can pick it off if the quarterback does not see him. But then it allows the other safety to help on other deeper routes on his side, the strong side of the field. So in order to get the best of both worlds, in order to draw Jalen Hawkins away from Christian Gonzalez for even a split second, but to also keep the strong side safety occupied, they're going to run this dagger concept. But on this dagger concept, that slot receiver takes an inside deep release at first before making his way straight up the field. And on the dagger, it is the slot receiver running a fly route, a clear out route, and then that outside receiver running a dig route, a basic route, about 10 to 12 yards downfield, because the thought is that that slot receiver clears out the space for you so you get an open look over the middle. And that would have been an option here as well for Jarrett Stidham. But another goal that they're hoping to accomplish to get Mims one-on-one with Christian Gonzalez is that when Jalen Hawkins reads that safety, or reads rather that slot receiver is taking a deep inside release, he's going to focus attention on him, because that is an indication that a crosser is coming to his side of the field, and then he is able to wall that off. So he is not able to help over the top with Christian Gonzalez, and then his job is made useless because that receiver with the inside release was not running a crosser. He was running that clear out route, and they were able to get the strong side safety over the top of that. And that's not really a fault of Jalen Hawkins. It was just a well-designed play by Sean Payton to take control and manipulate the coverage in order to get Marvin Mims and Christian Gonzalez one-on-one. And Marvin Mims runs a nice route where he kind of stutters to the outside for like a half second, but does it very smoothly. Christian Gonzalez bites just enough for Mims to get even. And the old saying is, if he's even, he's leaving. Jarrett Stidham gets it and throws a 51-yard, 52-yard pass deep downfield to Marvin Mims with plenty of air underneath it, a beautiful ball. The things that we were talking about to be worried about with Jarrett Stidham was his arm strength. When given a clean pocket, he's given a clean pocket, and they are able to get into the red zone on that second drive. And from there, they run just a simple little flood play where this time it is kind of Christian Gonzalez's fault, whereas the first time he just gets beat. The second time, what they're going to do is run a play action, and they love to do this. A lot of these sprint out passes, even with Bo Nix, is to just run that play action and get 3 different levels coming to the same side of the field on this flood concept. And Christian Gonzalez is supposed to be taking his receiver deep, and deep in terms of the red zone, so to the corner, basically. He's not playing him man-to-man, but he's going to take him if he gets the outside release, and the safety will take him if he gets the inside release, because you have the leverage there if he is going deeper down the field. However, the play action fools Christian Gonzalez. Gonzalez bites, putting Jalen Hawkins as the only guy against the wide receiver who's going to score the touchdown. I believe it was Cortland Sutton. And it's going to be a corner route by this receiver, which means it would have been Christian Gonzalez's responsibility in this bracket to get back deep and take away that back corner of the end zone, because Jalen Hawkins has inside leverage and is greatly out-leveraged by the Cortland Sutton route. It's not really possible at the NFL level for him to get there unless Jarrett Stidham floats the ball terribly or makes a really bad pass. It needs to be Christian Gonzalez fading back to that deep part of the corner with help over the top from Jalen Hawkins in case there's an inside move made. But because Gonzalez was not there, because he bit on the play action, it's a wide open touchdown, and the Denver Broncos, folks, are up 7-0. And I am starting to get a little bit cocky because I said, I think that while Jarrett Stidham won't play perfect ball, he's going to have some moments in this game, and the defense is going to be able to stop New England enough for them to get the win, for the Broncos to get the win. And right now, I'm feeling myself a little bit. I'm like, Jarrett Stidham making plays, Sean Payton drawing it up. And even though I tend to not like the Broncos that much and have a strong affinity for Drake May, a guy that I wanted the Vikings to trade up for, and so I have followed his career to make sure that I was right about Drake May, I certainly had my rooting biases more towards the Patriots, but in terms of just the pure analysis and wanting to boast and brag, it was, let's see what the Denver Broncos can do. And then we get a lot of defensive domination by the Broncos after this 7-0 lead. And they're forcing punts. They're getting pressure and sacks onto Drake May, who really can't find anywhere to go with this football. He finishes on the game with under 100 yards passing in the AFC Championship game. 86 yards is what his final numbers were. And then the Denver Broncos get a drive going, still up 7-0. In the second quarter, they get it down all the way to the New England 14-yard line. In field goal range, but it is 4th down and 1. And I think we have a lot of hindsight as 2020 takes coming out of this play, with a lot of people saying just take the field goal, go up 2 scores. And I certainly can see the argument in the moment to make that play. I don't think that there necessarily was a wrong call either way. Obviously, there was the snowstorm that was going to come later. I'm not sure. I know it was not part of the massive system that struck most of the United States and was kind of more of an isolated system on its own. I'm not sure how much they knew about that storm coming and how much damage it could cause. I'm sure if Sean Payton knew that we're going to have blizzard flurry conditions later on in this game, then he probably would have just decided to take the points there and go up 2 possessions, because the game itself was essentially shortened to 2.5 quarters of real football. And if you can get a 2-score lead with half a quarter to play, then things change up. And they get a good play call. So I still think that going for it on 4th and 1, even with a backup quarterback out there, you're not going to get into this position a ton. You're not going to get into the red zone a ton. And if it's 4th and 3, 4th and 4, sure, you kick the field goal there. But take advantage of the times that you are down there and try to maximize the points that you can score that are possible, especially if you have a play call that you really, really like. And Sean Payton had a play call that he really, really liked, and I thought that this was one of 2 times in this game specifically that the Denver Broncos very, very much missed Bo Nix, and that had Bo Nix been in the game for just these 2 plays, with all other things even, I think the Denver Broncos find a way to win this game. That's all it really came down to for me. And on this 4th down play, they're going to run a play that they run so often on short yardage situations, which is just a simple sprint out, look to the flat. If it's there, dump it off. If not, there's going to be other levels on the route coming behind. And you don't even really do the play action. It's technically a play action, but Bo Nix never fakes the handoff really, or fakes the handoff in a meaningful way, because the running back needs to get right out into the flat, and he needs to sprint out right away to avoid any pressure. They get the look that they want. They're trying to get it to the flat with the running back so that the 2 receivers in front of him can block, hopefully 2 guys. And they get the 2 guys because a 3rd receiver on that side of the field runs a deep corner route into the end zone to occupy the deep safety. So it's 2 wide receivers, or a wide receiver and a tight end, having to block 2 guys on 4th and 1 to get a yard, and they get their blocks. However, Stidham does not get the ball out right away. The timing is also off because it takes him a second to get around the corner on the sprint out. And because it's taking himself longer than it would Bo Nix to get into that position, the window in which RJ Harvey is open is not there by the time Jarrett Stidham is in a proper position. And now one of the wide receivers, I think it was Lil Jordan Humphrey, does an excellent job getting off of his block and making himself available to Jarrett Stidham, but the pressure was already barreling down on him, and he also has a pretty slow release. Whereas Bo Nix can get the ball out quick, will read it quick, and he will make that play with the snap of his fingers in the blink of an eye. Jarrett Stidham got to the rollout late, has a slower release. All of that messed with the timing of the route, and he still went to RJ Harvey. And Craig Woodson, making a very, very nice play, leaves his blocker, sheds his blocker, which was Lil Jordan Humphrey, abandons him, knowing that Stidham's probably not going to come back looking that way. If he is, whatever, it's a 1st down. We live to fight another day. But he abandons that man in order to go rush to the flat, bats the ball away, and it's a turnover on downs, and it's still a 1-possession game. And again, you're relying on your defense now, which makes the stop and has been good all game and makes the stop. The Broncos get the ball back. However, the second play, where having Bo Nix in instead of Jarrett Stidham would have made all the difference, because disaster strikes for the Denver Broncos. And it's 3rd down and long on this play. Let's keep that in mind as we describe it. You're still up 7-0 because you did not take the field goal and could not convert on 4th down, despite a good play call. You have the ball in your own territory now on 3rd down as the first half is coming to an end. The New England Patriots have not been able to move the ball one lick. I think at this time they had 1 first down at this point in the game. Otherwise, it was just punt, 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 and punt. Nothing was available for Drake May, and he would take his sacks on 3rd down and live to fight another day. Jarrett Stidham should have taken that advice because the pressure gets to him on this designed screen, which was covered up pretty nicely. I think more and more in this game, the Patriots did a good job of stopping what Denver likes to do, and that is just covering up the screens and covering up these short, quick passing routes. And that probably would have been effective against Bo Nix too, but Bo Nix, once that is taken away from him and Sean Payton adjust and are able to find second level and 3rd level answers to guys cheating up to cover the screens. Jarrett Stidham and Sean Payton not able to do that in this game as it progressed. But the screen is not there, so he can't throw it. So he pump fakes, tucks the ball, figures that he's about to get sacked, and for some reason decides he wants to get rid of the football as he is going to get sacked. Mind you, this is 3rd down. And something that stuck out to me hearing players talk over the last few years is what Joe Burrow said when he gets on third down. Because he talked about the amount of sacks that he takes, and he's like, well, a lot of those are on third down. I don't really care about those because you're punting anyway. The choices are between an incompletion at this point. You're probably not going to pick it up with the play as destroyed as it was, and then you're forcing yourself to punt. Or a sack, and you're forcing yourself to punt from maybe a few yards back. There is really no realistic chance of a positive scenario that you can get after deciding to tuck the ball to then go on and want to throw it away before getting sacked. There is nothing good that comes out of that. The only thing that can happen is bad, and that is what happened. It is that while he was trying to basketball pass the football forward, he was getting hit, and so the momentum as he was hit in doing this little basketball pass took the ball backwards, the physics of it, the force of it, and the ball ended up being a backwards pass, a fumble, despite his hand going forward because of where it was released and where it landed. And the Patriots are able to pick it up. And it was blown dead by the referees, or else it would have been a touchdown, but it's still excellent field position. They cash in on a Drake May touchdown run on a quarterback draw, kind of just going into the old Buffalo Bills playbook, the old college football playbook as well, and letting Drake May make the magic work with his legs on a day where it was tough to get anything going with his arm. So now you've gone from 7-0 to 7-7 without the Patriots offense really having to do anything. And if you had forced them to do something, if you had punted, there's a good chance that they, again, stall out and you get the ball back with good field position, and maybe you can go down the field and kick a field goal as time expires and go up 10-0 anyway. But it was Jarrett Stidham, not Bo Nix. I don't think Bo Nix makes that mistake. I think we saw a lot of mistakes like that through the first 4 games of Bo Nix's career, and then he kind of disciplined himself into not making those mistakes and knowing when to get rid of the football anyway. Just take the sack, Jarrett. Bo Nix would have probably just thrown that away before the pressure got to him as soon as he saw that the play was dead, or he would have just taken the sack. If you have Bo Nix in this game, you're up 10-0, 14-0 right now instead of it being 7-7. And that is kind of what is at the center of this whole loss for Denver. I think the most disappointing, or the most you'll look back and think, oh, we could have had it. Because obviously you're not disappointed in Bo Nix for getting the injury, but it is disappointing that that injury, ankle injury, occurred to him at such an inopportune time. Because I think if Bo Nix does not get injured, based on how this game played, and again, that is all things equal, we can dive into the butterfly effect, knowing that if Bo Nix plays, everything else changes. If one single snowflake drops in a different direction, everything else changes in the course of the game. But all other things equal, Bo Nix in those situations gives Denver a good shot to win this ball game, because the Broncos miss a field goal at the end of regulation, a long field goal, or the end of the first half, I should say. And we go into the second half, and the Patriots have the football. And as we come back from halftime, you start to notice, okay, there's a little bit of snow falling here. It had been clear, a little bit cold, a little bit windy early on in this game, but it seemed like your standard January afternoon NFC Championship or AFC Championship outdoor sort of game. And you get the inklings of a little bit of snow, some foreshadowing here made by the football gods. And the Patriots take full advantage of it, whether willingly or not. As the snow continues to fall harder, they just go on this long, long drive and flip the script on their offense from what it was in the first half. They saw Drake May getting pressured basically every single time that he dropped back, and were still throwing the football 65% of the time in that first half. So what do? They go screen on the first play. No chance of getting pressured. And then they go run. And they go a drop back. Pressure comes to Drake May. He doesn't throw it. He decides to run with it. And it seemed like a very intentional adjustment made by Josh McDaniels and this Patriots coaching staff to keep Drake May out of potential trouble that had gotten them into some issues in the previous 2 games that they were able to overcome because the offense that they were going up against in those 2 games with the fumbles by May, the offenses that they were going up against had kind of been just inept against the Patriots defense. At this point in the game, at the first half, the Broncos, or at the beginning of the second half, the Broncos had been able to move the ball pretty effectively all throughout the first half, so it wasn't like you were going to get that more pathetic sort of offense that you saw in Houston and Los Angeles, so the adjustment was made perfectly to try to move the ball on the ground, and they were able to, not in big chunks, but they just went a lot of big personnel and just went straight up man blocking scheme, where you're not moving your guys to a gap, you are not moving your guys a couple steps to the right on the play side for a zone. It is just, hey, Garrett Bradbury, you're on him. Morgan Moses, you're on him. Will Campbell, you are on him. No matter what. Push those guys so that Ramondre Stevenson and Trevion Henderson can get a little bit of space. Maybe there's not holes that are opening up, but by just moving the line a little bit, you're picking up yards nonetheless. And that's what they did on this drive. And it's a drive that they go down the field. They take 9.5 minutes left. And mind you, snow is slowly starting to pick up throughout the course of this drive. It has not yet accumulated on the field, but a blizzard, you can tell, is right around the corner. And taking all this time off the clock, shortening the game, gets them into field goal range. 4th down, they convert on 1 4th down on a quarterback sneak, and then on another 4th down where it's 4th and 4, 4th and 5, and it's just, okay, we'll take the points right here. They kick a field goal with Andres Borregales, and they go up 10-7. And for all intents and purposes, that was the game, because we cut to commercial, and we are in, at this time, when we cut to commercial, we're in Denver, and we're in a little bit of snow. We're in some weather, but we're in an AFC championship game in Denver. We come back 2.5 minutes later, and all of a sudden, we're at Hoth, where the white uniformed New England Patriots stormtroopers are trying to take down the Rebel Alliance led by Bo Nix in a frozen hellscape. The snow is falling. It has accumulated, all in this 2.5 minute break. There's snow on the ground. There was grass on the ground earlier. It looked like the snow was melting when it hit the ground. All of a sudden, it's all here. I had to make sure I didn't go to an NFL Network classic of the Bart Starr Ice Bowl where he had to be pushed across the goal line to beat the Dallas Cowboys with a quarterback sneak in a snowstorm. I had to make sure that wasn't what I was watching, because the difference from when we left from break and when we returned from TV timeout was that stark. And it's snow, snow, snow all throughout, and really limits what either of these two teams can do in the passing game. They have to go short. They can't really go long. The ball is slipping out of their hands. When they do go long, it's being thrown low. It's not being thrown with as much velocity as it would in normal conditions. Both of these teams can just key in on the run, and really had to hope, if you were Denver, that you could get Drake May into making the same mistake that Jarrett Stidham did earlier with a disastrous sort of turnover that puts you in good field position to steal a score, and they just were not able to do that. And by the end of the game, it's 4th down, Drake May with the ball after an interception by the Patriots on, I'm not sure how easy it was on the field to see a Patriots team with the white uniforms. I'm guessing it was probably a little bit easier than it was when watching the broadcast, but the broadcast view, those guys were blending in. It was like they were camouflaged, and I wouldn't have had any idea if I was Jarrett Stidham where to throw the football, because I wasn't sure if an invisible man was going to all of a sudden make himself appear and get a takeaway, and that's kind of what it seemed like at the end with that interception. It gets Drake May going a little bit too hard with the Star Wars themes. But it gets Drake May the football, and they face 3rd down with an opportunity to, if they get a first down on this 3rd and 7, officially end this game. I'm not sure that if they don't pick it up in that snow, if after they punt it, if Denver is able to get down into field goal range, but obviously there is a chance. And Josh McDaniels calls a run on 3rd and 7, and he calls a standard like outside zone going to the right run. And Drake May, it's going to be a moment if the Patriots win and are Super Bowl winners, when we are watching America's game, the story of the 2026 or 25 New England Patriots next year ahead of the Thursday night kickoff, they are going to be talking about when Drake May decided to call his own number. He said after the game that after getting the play call, he decided that he was just going to take it himself, fake the handoff, get a naked bootleg, and try and pick up the first down. He didn't tell that to his teammates. He did not tell that to his coaches. He made this decision up in his mind before the play started upon receiving the play call. He wanted to put the ball in his own hands, and he put the ball in his own hands. In a game where he kind of had to be limited, he at least wanted to control one aspect of it, and that was the end, and that is what you want from your quarterback, because he gets out on a naked bootleg. There is one guy that he has to beat. He has to get the angle on him, and he is deceptively fast. Not to get too overly generic with our white guy quarterback terms, but he is. He's a bigger guy, and he has speed, and he has the ability to run the football. And he moves downfield pretty quickly, and he is able to get past the incoming linebacker, stiff arms him, and just is able to get that first down and put the game away. So the New England Patriots win the game. They kneel it down. It's 10-7, your final score. They are going to the Super Bowl for the first time since the 2018-19 season when they beat the Los Angeles Rams 13-3. And if you're the Denver Broncos, this season just feels like a massive what if now. And you always have to kind of harken back to what Dan Campbell said after the Lions blew a 24-7 halftime lead against the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game following the 2023 regular season. And he said, there's no guarantee that you are going to be back here. He told that bluntly to his players and bluntly to the Detroit media. There is no guarantee that you will ever be back here. We're going to try like hell, but things have to go your way. And in Denver's case this year, there were a lot of one-score games, a lot of come-from-behind victories, and more often than not, we've seen that those things tend to regress back to the mean in the following season, where you're not pulling out as many of these wins. So it feels like a big what if. What if Bo Nix didn't break his ankle late in the game against the Bills? There's a chance we're going to the Super Bowl. I think that is probably what is on the minds of the Denver Broncos. I don't think you can get angry too much at Jarrett Stidham and Sean Payton if you're a Broncos fan. I think you can get angry at the football gods for them deciding to all of a sudden unleash a massive snowstorm as soon as New England takes its first game of the lead, and to end the game after New England has taken its first lead of the game. If there's anyone doubting whether in this 21st century, whether or not the Patriots had some supernatural cosmic fortune, I think that has put the nail in the coffin that, yes, there is something cosmically out there who, is a huge New England Patriots fan. Some Egyptian god of long ago, or Greek epic hero that controls different aspects of the world is a Patriots fan, because they timed the snow perfectly in that instance. Also, the cracks of the offense beginning to show a little bit, not necessarily with the play calling, but this was a good defensive line for New England, but it was not like this otherworldly defensive line. And they blitzed a little bit, but there were times when Quinn Miners, who is an all-pro guard, got beat off his spot right away. Maybe not so much with Garrett Bowles, but you had some instances where Mike McGlinchey wasn't getting it done. Quinn Miners wasn't getting it done. And I think that hurt. And do you take advantage? Do you see something on film if you are one of these other AFC West opponents for the 2026 season and find a way to get some penetration against this Denver Broncos offensive line? Because then I think it forces Bo Nix to evolve as a passer. It forces Sean Payton to evolve more as a play caller to set up his quarterback for more success if the offensive line does not hold up as often as it did the last 2 years. Are there any cracks that the Patriots exposed? I think that will be worth watching as we go into next season to see if Quinn Miners and Mike McGlinchey are the same players we thought, to see if Garrett Bowles can continue this excellent run that he's had. Or if not, it might be a surprisingly negative year for the Denver Broncos when you take that into account along with the likely regression to the mean in one-score games. For the Patriots, they're going to the Super Bowl. Drake May now, despite not really looking good in any one particular game, we mentioned in this one he only had 86 total passing yards, but he made plays when it mattered the most, I guess, and he's now vanquished the number 1 defense by EPA per play in the National Football League. That was the Texans. He's vanquished the number 5. That was the Broncos. And the number 8. That was the Chargers. So 3 top 10 defenses that he has gone up against. 3 playoff opponents for a Patriots team that were kind of shrugged at because of the easiness of the regular season schedule. Drake May and that offense able to beat 3 top 10 defenses, and they're going to face number 2 in terms of EPA per play in the Super Bowl in 2 Sundays. And that is because the Seattle Seahawks come away with a 31-27 win over the Los Angeles Rams. And this was another exciting game between these two teams, where at one point it was a 2-possession game, but more often than not, it was a 1-possession back-and-forth battle between 2 quarterbacks. 2 teams that split their season series with 1-possession games between the 2 of them. They're able to put together maybe not another classic, but another really good game. And it starts with the Rams getting the football in the first half and going and punting. I don't know if it was a 3-and-out or if they picked up a first down then punted, but a punt. It ended with maybe 1 first down and a punt. I don't have the exact drive chart in front of me in terms of how many plays that they ran, and it gives the ball to Seattle and Sam Darnold, who very much could have been having flashbacks from last year going into this game, from last year in the wild card round when the Los Angeles Rams gave him all sorts of simulated pressure looks, only blitzed 20% of the time, but pressured him 52% of the time, and kind of gave him nightmares and caused him to revert back into the quarterback that he was earlier on in his career in that game, and might have been the deciding factor in the Vikings ultimately not deciding to match the price that the Seahawks gave Sam Darnold. Because the Vikings did try to offer a contract to Darnold, but it just was not up to the level in terms of both years and compensation that he wanted. And the Vikings thought that the value proposition of just going with J.J. McCarthy and getting him the experience needed to be the franchise future quarterback and the financial flexibility that it gives you to build the team around him, they thought that would be more valuable. And maybe process-wise it was, but results-wise it was not, because Sam Darnold was able to get those demons in his past. And if there were flashbacks that were affecting his mental preparation going into this game, they did not show themselves on the field at all, because he was not pressured. The offensive line kept him clean, and when he was pressured, he still was delivering really good throws. He had a positive EPA per play on pressured and non-pressured dropbacks, on blitzed and non-blitzed dropbacks. He was good no matter what look that he was given. And they go down the field and take a shot early with a 51-yard pass to Rashid Shaheed. And what they did basically to set this up is they get Rashid Shaheed lined up to the outside against Darius Williams. And they motion guys around so that they can ensure that it is Darius Williams as the lone guy going up against Rashid Shaheed and his deep ball speed. They don't really have to occupy the safety. The safety gets over just a little bit late, but they isolate Shaheed on one side of the field, put every other receiver, and it's basically just like an ISO basketball play. Your man against my man. Let's go deep, over the top. Rashid Shaheed burns Darius Williams. And Seattle's in business right away. And if you're looking for a confidence-boosting throw, if you are in the camp that thinks that Sam Darnold is at his best when he has confidence in himself, and the confidence or lack of confidence has a major determining role in how Sam Darnold plays on a particular game, then this was the perfect play to get out of the way early. Because now it forced Los Angeles to, anytime they saw Darius Williams lined up one-on-one, or really any receiver or a cornerback lined up one-on-one against Rashid Shaheed, they knew that they would need to put help over the top and occupy one of the safeties, have him maybe abandon what would be his role in a normal system, in their normal defensive system, have to go help out now with whatever wide receiver or whatever cornerback Rashid Shaheed is going up against, and that dictated some of the play calls later on in this game. It leads to a 2-yard touchdown run by Kenneth Walker, who really got the game going on the ground early for Seattle. They looked good on those first 2 possessions, running the football with some outside and inside zone mixed in. Typically a team that likes to run a lot of outside zone, which is where all your offensive linemen go to the play side, take a step towards the play side, and try to cross the face of the defender that is in that play side gap, and then reach around to seal him off from the outside. They do that a lot, but in this case they went with a lot of inside zone where you are still attacking that play side defender, but you are pushing him out of the way almost like a down block, except now with the play coming to that side. And if you don't have someone in your gap, then you help out with the player that is to your backside before climbing to the second level and finding the next man to hit. And they ran a lot of that inside zone, and they were able to get a 2-yard touchdown run out of it, but the Los Angeles Rams really clamped down on that as the game went on. And especially here, they go up and take a 10-3 lead late in this drive. They're able to stop the run after. So the Seahawks went up 7-0. The Rams get a field goal drive. Then it's Seahawks field goal drive. 10-3 is our score. The Rams eventually make it 10-6. And we're kind of stuck in this defensive stalemate through a lot of the second quarter where teams are just making really good plays on the defensive side of the football. And then the Rams do it. They finally get back into their 13 personnel that they had all but abandoned in the second half against Carolina and throughout the game against the Chicago Bears. They went 13 personnel, and they absolutely dominated the nickel front that Seattle presented when looking against the 13 personnel. We mentioned it. Seattle is not going to change out its personnel too often, not going to use different sub packages. They are going to stay in nickel more often than not, which gives you a bit of a lighter box to work against if you are in the run game. And the thing for Seattle that has made that size mismatch irrelevant is that Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams, Ernest Jones are all such good, stout run defenders that it doesn't matter that they're outnumbered and outsized along the line of scrimmage, because they're able to take up double teams and still get penetration and still force plays and spill run plays to the outside where reinforcements and your athletic, fast players are waiting to end things. But in this case, in this second quarter drive towards the end of the first half, they went 13 personnel, and the Rams got the better of the Seahawks with, again, not big chunk runs, but little jab runs after jab runs where it eventually leads to a knockout punch. And that knockout punch, or maybe not a knockout punch because of the game, but the knockout punch in terms of this drive specifically was going play action off of that 13 personnel. And to be clear here, it wasn't just runs out of 13 personnel. The Rams also passed the ball about as evenly as they did out of the one wide receiver, three tight ends, or one running back, three tight end set. And they actually had a better EPA per play when they were passing the ball out of the three tight end set than when they were running the football out of the three tight end set. And part of that is probably because of this play that they score a touchdown on, and that is a mesh traffic running back concept, where what they are going to do is put three receivers on one side of the field and have them all go run directly to the opposite side on drag routes or shallow in routes, shallow crossing routes to get over to the other side of the field. And if you are playing man, that means every cornerback is following their man to the other side of the field, and it leaves some empty space to work with other players. And, I mean, it's a fairly common concept in the NFL. It's definitely not some sort of exotic look, and linebackers more and more get trained to find a way to avoid that traffic. That's why it's called traffic. That's why it's called a mesh traffic with the running back as the key. They find a way a lot of times to filter through that so that they are not getting held up by the two or three cornerbacks that are following their 2 to 3 wide receivers. They're able to get over there, sift through, and make the play and make a tackle, even if if the running back does get the ball for a second. But in this instance, the Rams add a little bit of a wrinkle where they motion the tight end. They're going to run this play so that it can be open on the left. So the heavy set is on the left hand of the line of scrimmage that they clear out so that Kyren Williams can leak out. But they start out with the tight end on the right, and they motion him over to the left to kind of get Seattle to show their hand. Okay, they are playing man in this instance when this guy follows him over. And then they go, well, let's confuse them a little bit. Let's make them think for a second and talk between the linebackers as to which man that they are covering. And they motion the tight end now into the backfield so that the tight end and Kyren Williams are about in the same position when it comes to the horizontal plane of the football, so that it's harder for the linebackers. They need to discuss, okay, I'm going to get him, I'm going to get him. If it was alignment, if one was more offset to the right, one was more offset to the left, it'd just be like, okay, the linebacker that is more offset to the left, you obviously get the guy that is more offset to the left, that is more in front of you. But when they are evened up like that, you need to communicate with your linebackers. But they snap the ball as soon as that tight end gets to the same horizontal plane as the running back. So now it takes a split second for them to decide, okay, who is going after Kyren Williams here? Who is following the tight end? And that split second is all Kyren Williams needs to get wide open. The linebacker didn't even really have a time or a chance. The one that ended up on Kyren Williams did not have a chance to even sift through the traffic because of that brief moment of hesitancy that Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams created with that slight motion into the backfield by that tight end. And it was a good play call. It was a good notice of a tendency by Seattle in this game, a team that plays split field coverage a lot more than man, played man at a much higher rate than they did throughout the course of the season. That was something that we said they could look out for because it allows the Rams not to dictate and manipulate the coverages. Because Sean McVay, probably more than any other offensive play caller in the NFL, knows your coverage rules and knows the best way to try to trick your communication and to manipulate you into going to one spot of the field so that another spot in that field becomes open. And we said one of the ways to mitigate that was to play more man coverage, and maybe playing cover one with a deep safety, and your other safety can either act as like a guy that can poach crossing routes coming from the opposite direction, or he can help whatever defensive back is man-to-man against Puka Nacua, and they can just bracket Puka Nacua and allow his impact on the game to be limited. Well, they noticed that the Seahawks were playing more in that man system a lot, especially on these sorts of plays near the red zone, and stopped trying to manipulate coverage and just went and manipulated the man routes, or were able to get a man beater so that Kyren Williams could get open, take the lead 13-10, and this was right after the 2-minute warning. So we are under 2 minutes to play here. The Seattle Seahawks are down 13-10, and then they punt the ball. And the Rams have the ball, but then they punt the ball, all within the course of this final 2 minutes. And the Seahawks have less than a minute left, and it's like, okay, we're going to try and get into field goal range. But the Seahawks get a 42-yard pass that allows them to instead just go for field goal, a field goal before the end of the half to tie the game. It allows them some extra chances at scoring. And on this 42-yard pass, it is to our guy, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had over 100 yards at the end of this first half and was just all over the field, really. It is a cover 2 that the Seahawks are going up against. And what they're going to do is they're going to motion JSN from one side of the formation to the other. And they're going to keep one safety occupied with a deep route and then just have a post with Puka Nacua. And typically a lot of times we'll use, or not Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith-Njigba. But a lot of times what you will see is that safety on the other side of the wide receiver in a cover 2, if he is noticing that the receiver on his side of the field is not going deep, so that he does not necessarily have to cover his deep half and instead can look for work elsewhere, he can poach a crossing route. They occupied him for a split second so that he couldn't come and close towards the middle of this JSN post route because they had Rashid Shaheed, who had that big shot earlier in the game, running another deep route. And they had to make sure that they had help over the top there because Darius Williams had already been burned one-on-one by Shaheed previously in this game. And that is what we're talking about, that early Rashid Shaheed play, setting up stuff for Seattle to do later on in this game. And that forces the safety to cheat over towards the sideline. It opens up the middle more. And by the time the safety is trying to get back to close that opening, once he sees that Rashid Shaheed is taken care of, it's too late. And JSN makes a nice catch, survives a pretty good hit in between the two safeties. It's a good throw by Sam Darnold, good play calling. And it allows Seattle the chance now to try and score a touchdown before halftime instead of just going for a field goal. And it's another play that showcased JSN's ability. It also showcased how good of a color commentator Tom Brady has become. Where if you are not a fan of Tom Brady at this point, you can still probably say Greg Olsen is better, but I would argue that Tom Brady has certainly earned his spot now with a lot of his commentary this year. And it was put into play right before this play where Tom Brady is talking about the nuances within JSN's route running and that he does not indicate with his shoulders which way he is going. He keeps his shoulders level and he keeps his shoulders balanced. If you dip your shoulder to one way, when you dip your leg to cut, you see that you're going the opposite way. And a lot of guys will try to mitigate that with head fakes or beating the drum. But JSN just keeps his shoulders upright, does not dip his shoulders, and that is what Tom Brady is saying, so that the defense gets no indication of which way he is breaking out his route. And as soon as he ends up with that thought, as soon as he ends that sentence, we see JSN motion over from the right to the left in the red zone and run this post corner out of the backfield and get wide open to score a touchdown. And a lot of that was his route running, because when Kobe Durant, who was responsible for that deep part, is not able to get a read on JSN's shoulders as to which way he's about to break out, he kind of just ignores him and follows a deep crosser that was coming his way. And he abandons the spot. It was Kobe Durant absolutely just vacating his spot and trying to make something happen. It was a stupid play by Kobe Durant. I don't know what he was looking at, because he just follows the deep crosser instead of passing it off to a middle of the field safety who should be able to control it. And then he can follow it for a second and then get back to his spot. But he kind of makes the same mistake that we saw Darnell Savage made, just in a different sort of play, where he vacates his spot, getting too over-aggressive, and leaves the corner of the end zone open. And part of that is just poor defensive reading by him and poor play by him, but it's also, when he reads JSN, he can't tell if he's going to stick to the inside or stick to the outside. And so he assumes that the linebacker underneath is going to carry him over the top. And I think that was Nate Landman. That was the linebacker that initially gets onto him and kind of shoves him out, or gets a little bit of contact on him, but then abandons him because Nate Landman also can't tell and whether JSN is going one way or the other, because his shoulders are even, just like Tom Brady said. And he passes him off thinking Kobe Durant is going to be in his spot. And I mean, I think if Nate Landman follows that route, it's probably still a touchdown. I don't think Nate Landman was going to be able to catch up to JSN, so I don't think it's very much his fault. I think Kobe Durant really blew it, and it allowed Jackson Smith-Njigba to get a wide open touchdown. And so the Seahawks go into halftime with a 17-13 lead, and they get the ball in the third quarter, and the Rams force a punt. All right, we're good. We are good, ladies and gentlemen. We are back in this one-possession game. We can go and take the lead on this play. The punt's in the air. All right, let's get Matthew Stafford and the offense ready to get on the field. We're waiting. We're on our toes on the sideline. As soon as Xavier Smith catches that ball, what is he doing? Did he just trip? Did he trip backwards? What on earth is going? The ball hit him? That is what happened. A terrible muff punt by Xavier Smith. And you can talk about the Rams' special teams issues until you're blue in the face all season long. That has nothing to do with the special team system. That has nothing to do with the special team coach. That has to do everything with Xavier Smith stumbling like Jordan Addison off of the I-5 freeway in the middle of the night and not being able to keep his footing. Jordan Addison, who for any one of you that went over his head, that Jordan Addison was suspended 3 games because he was drunk on the side of a freeway back in 2024 inside of his car. That is the reference that I'm making there. It gets worse if you have to explain it. But Xavier Smith does that. He stumbles backwards, falls, the ball hits him. Seahawks get the ball back. They go in and score a touchdown, because just a disaster on that muff. And now that you've set up both Rashid Shaheed and JSN as guys that you need to bracket no matter what, because you can't trust your defensive backs and linebackers to properly communicate and pass them off the right way, now you're just bracketing 2 different guys. Everyone else is going to get a one-on-one look, including Jake Bobo of all people, because after the muff punt, Seattle recovers, and on the very next play, the Rams blitz, and they use Jackson Smith-Njigba's cornerback to blitz, the guy that was supposed to be on Jackson Smith-Njigba. And they rotate out of their 2-high shell to a 1-high look, essentially, where there were only 3 defenders on this side to go up against JSN, but because of the blitz coming from that corner, now there's 2 guys on that side that are responsible for JSN. Well, once again, just like Rashid Shaheed opened up the middle for JSN on that pre-halftime drive, now JSN is opening up the middle for Jake Bobo, who gets one-on-one coverage, makes a fine move, I guess, to get away from the cornerback, but it wasn't like this otherworldly route, and the cornerback bites, and Jake Bobo makes the catch in the end zone on a in-crossing route because, once again, the middle had been vacated because earlier plays forced Los Angeles' defense to respond to Seattle's offense in a way that was advantageous for Seattle, and Klint Kubiak and Sam Darnold were able to recognize that and take full advantage of that and just stayed a step ahead of Chris Shula in their offensive play calling system. So if you are a team, and we'll talk about head coaches in just a bit here, but if you're a team that is down to Klint Kubiak and Chris Shula, and we're using this game as a battle royale as to who you would choose based on how they went up against one another as your new head coach, Klint Kubiak won in this one. Chris Shula did not have a good game. Chris Shula could not get any pressure on Sam Darnold. Didn't blitz to get pressure. Did not bring anything really up the middle. Tried some stunts. The Seahawks were ready for him. Gave some simulated pressures. The Seahawks were ready for them. I am sure that Klint Kubiak showed Jalen Sundell and Anthony Bradford especially, but everybody on that offensive line, what the Rams did against Minnesota in Arizona during the wild card game last year, and said, be prepared for this, and this is how you're going to respond. They spent all week preparing for that, and it paid off. It kept Sam Darnold upright, and Klint Kubiak won the battle of the minds between him and Chris Shula. The only way that you were really going to be able to get pressure is if the Rams blitzed, and they shied away from blitzing in this game and blitzed at an under 20% rate. And I don't think Chris Shula made the proper adjustments there, while Klint Kubiak did, and also didn't have to go up against the blitz, so was better off for it. So it's Seattle now up by a score of 24-13. The Rams do come back, and they score a touchdown, with Riq Woolen making just one of the dumbest plays at one point that you'll ever see, in which he is... Well, first of all, let me say that I am a fan of getting rid of the taunting penalty. I think we have gotten to a point where the owners are clutching their pearls a little bit too much when they see someone dancing on the field, and particularly someone that is not white dancing on the field. I think there probably is something internally that the predominantly white owners of NFL teams do not like to see, whether they recognize that it is directly race-related or not. I think that is definitely a clear attempt to try and suppress different cultures and how they celebrate when big plays happen, and to punish them for not acting in accordance. And that pearl clutching led to this Riq Woolen penalty, where he is able on 3rd down and 12 to knock the ball away from Puka Nacua, and then he goes over to the sideline and stands on the sideline, the Rams sideline, by the way, and starts jawing at everybody there. And that, to me, is fine. However, the referee, like a parent of some indignant toddler, goes over to Riq Woolen and says, you need to cut this off or I'm going to flag you. I think we'd have a lot more outcrying here if he was flagged right away for the initial taunts, which is what it looked like at first, and then you went back and saw that the referee is trying to tell him, I'm warning you, don't make me do it. You're still doing it. What did you expect me to do? Here's the flag. When that referee is telling you, stop, or else I'm going to flag you, stop talking, go celebrate on your sideline. Riq Woolen obviously has nothing to blame, or nobody to blame, rather, but himself. And it ended up costing him because on the very next play, Puka Nacua burns him for a deep touchdown and gets the Rams back within one score. But the Seahawks never trailed in the second half. They got back up eventually to 31-27. It was 31-20. Or it was 24-20, then 31-20, then 31-27. But the Rams are able to get a stop in the fourth quarter and move the ball down the field again. And they get it into field goal range to where it is 4th down and 4 now with about 5 minutes left. And here I think it's much more cut and dry as to what you do. You don't go for the field goal. I've seen some comments saying, well, you should have gone for the field goal and then give your defense a chance to get the ball back. And maybe when you have 25 seconds left to go with no timeouts later in this game, you give yourself a better chance to get into field goal range. I think that's a little bit ridiculous. You're 4th and 4. It's not 4th and 12. You are in a good position to try and take the lead here close to the goal line in the red zone. But the Seahawks were just all over it. Mike McDonald's defense came through. Mike McDonald saw a 3rd down and 6 play in overtime last week against the Bears that the Rams had run. He saw a 4th down play against the Panthers wildcard week that the Rams had run. And in all of these plays, this 4th down in Carolina, this 3rd down in Chicago, both of the defenses are bringing everyone up to the line of scrimmage. And in Carolina's case, they end up bringing a simulated pressure and just rushing 4 and are able to dirty up any hot route potential. So Matthew Stafford couldn't throw hot. He ends up rolling out, throws an incompletion, turnover on downs. Meanwhile, Chicago, they bring all 7 of their guys, 3rd down and 6 in overtime that were up at the line of scrimmage. They bring all 7, and the 4 men responsible for guarding wide receivers are all playing about 10 yards back, and it allows Puka Nacua to just turn around, get the ball, pick up the first down before somebody's able to make contact with him. Mike McDonald looked at that and saw, okay, well, the best course of action here is to obviously do kind of what the Carolina Panthers did when they faced 4th down and not what the Bears did, because Matthew Stafford will take full advantage of that. So he mugs up with linebacker in each A-gap, with defenders all along the line of scrimmage. I think there are 8 guys that are all within that first line of defense, as you would call it. Now, 2 of them are cornerbacks that are just pressing their wide receivers, but you got 7 guys that are probably going to blitz, or you're expecting to blitz and are showing blitz. But essentially what they're doing is they're just having their defenders read what the running back is doing. And if he tries to get out into the flat right away without any regard to try and pick up a block, then these 2 in particular, it was Julian Love, and I can't think of the other one, but Julian Love and I think it was Nicky Munwari, both bail out after showing pressure because they see that the running back is going out into the flat to try and be the hot route option for Matthew Stafford. And Matthew Stafford looks that guy's way first on that hot route. Instead, those 2 guys drop back and just bracket the running back. And also the Rams on this play kind of screwed themselves because they wanted a more favorable matchup for Puka Nacua, and Devon Witherspoon was in the slot against Puka Nacua. And so what happens here is they're going to motion Terrence Ferguson to get to the inside, one, to see how Seattle responds, to see if Witherspoon will stay in his spot or if somebody else will motion with him. Then you can get a better tell on the man coverage. But Witherspoon does go instead now with the tight end. So his duty was not necessarily specifically to be Puka Nacua, but his duty was to guard whoever the number 2 guy to the inside on that side of the field was. And because Terrence Ferguson motioned into that zone, that allowed him to get a very favorable matchup on a tight end in Terrence Ferguson. And what it also did was, instead of now having Puka Nacua one-on-one, the defensive scheme for Seattle in this instance was to drop one of the edge rushers on the opposite side from where you were dropping on the hot route. So the hot route was coming from the left. On the right hand is where all this other Puka Nacua, Terrence Ferguson stuff is happening. And if you drop out that edge rusher, he's going to bracket the outside of whoever the innermost receiver on the right side of the formation is. And now that you've made that not Terrence Ferguson, you've motioned Ferguson out to try and get Puka Nacua an advantage. You actually gave Puka Nacua a disadvantage because he has an inside guy following him along with the man-to-man guy playing with outside leverage. So there's no world where you can get that ball out to Puka Nacua quickly. Whereas if you had gone and just left it as is, that's Terrence Ferguson that is being bracketed, and now it's Puka Nacua one-on-one. And even though Devon Witherspoon is excellent, it's more favorable, obviously, to have Puka Nacua against him than Terrence Ferguson. But instead, now Terrence Ferguson is your only option on this fourth down play because the Seahawks have dropped back and are only rushing 3, and at one point are only rushing 2. So you have 9 men back there in coverage, and they're still getting pressure because of the way it was simulated, or at least they're getting a push into the pocket. I don't think they hit Matthew Stafford, but there was certainly some color flashing and speeding up the process for Stafford, so he can't go to the hot route. He can't go to Puka Nacua. He looks into the back of the end zone and just throws it. Devon Witherspoon able, just blanketed on Terrence Ferguson to make the play and force a turnover on downs. So excellent execution, excellent play calling, and some self-sabotage with that little motion by the Los Angeles Rams. And then the Seahawks go and are aggressive down the field, move the football. They run first, they pass, and are trying to just run out the clock as best they can. And on one of these, it is 3rd and 7. And this was probably the play that ends up being the dagger, or at least close to it. There was a holding called later on against the Rams defense on 3rd down that probably made this game more definitively over. But with about 3 minutes left here on this 3rd and 7, and with Los Angeles having just 2 timeouts left, you can really wind the clock down and put them in a very hard spot, down by 4 instead of 3, where they have to score a touchdown, but have a minute and a half left with no timeouts and in probably not great field position. If you want to just run the ball, play it safe, you're going to get down to about the 2-minute warning. If you pick it up, you're going to force the last timeout to be called, and then you're going to get the 2-minute warning and are getting even less time, given the ball back to the Rams with even less time than you otherwise would. So you're looking for a play that you can really complete here. They really got it. Where they're going to bring out a tight end to the left and a wide receiver as well to the left. Wide receiver, by the way, is Rashid Shaheed. So right now the Rams rules are get him with your corner, get him help over the top with the safety on that side. It's another 2-shell look by the Rams. So they have 2 safeties deep. So the safety on Rashid Shaheed's side is automatically going to follow him if he sees him go deep, as will the cornerback manned up against Rashid Shaheed, because still that first quarter play is burning in the back of the minds of Chris Shula and the Rams defensive backs. They motion one of those receivers, the non-Rashid Shaheed one, into the backfield to be a running back. They motion at the same time a tight end who is on the left side, Rashid Shaheed's side, over to the right to be a tight end on that side. So now it's Rashid Shaheed all alone on one side of the field. He's going to occupy in this 2-man coverage, which is man across except for cover 2 zone by the deep safeties. He's going to occupy the one cornerback on that side of the field because they've moved everybody else off and seen that it is man coverage by moving everybody else over to the right side of the field with those motions because they had to follow him. If they didn't follow them, then that would be an indicator of zone. It wouldn't necessarily guarantee zone, but it would be an indicator. This indicates man coverage. So you know that the underneath parts of Rashid Shaheed's side of the field are going to be probably unoccupied. Now you have JSN and Cooper Kupp lined up as wide receivers on the right side. And now with the tight end over there and two wide receivers, even though they're not bunched together, they're going to do this popular bunch play, whereas you take the outermost receiver and immediately bring him underneath. Because in man coverage, there's some more traffic that the outside man is going to have to follow in order to cover. And sometimes defenses will try to mitigate that by, in those trips sets, saying, okay, whoever is the innermost defender out of these three cornerbacks, you take the man that releases to the inside first so that you don't have a cornerback going through traffic. But because these guys weren't bunched up, it was two wide receivers bunched up on the far side and then a tight end on the line of scrimmage. And the two wide receivers were split out wide, so it wasn't in this bunch. There wasn't that play call set up because it was a linebacker in the middle that was manned up against the tight end because the Rams are going to blitz another linebacker that otherwise would have been on the running back, but you wanted to not show that blitz and wanted to keep that middle linebacker who's not blitzing but is going to be on the tight end. You want to keep him not manned up, or at least not showing man right over that tight end, because then that would give away that the innermost middle linebacker, sorry to be all confusing, but would be the blitzer. You don't want to give up that blitz because you're trying to put pressure on one side of the line of scrimmage against Sam Darnold and company. So they're not able to play this inside-out release game. The Rams aren't. And instead, it's just man across the board. So that first guy's going to do a drag route underneath immediately to create that traffic. The second guy, in order to create more traffic, the second innermost wide receiver, is going to do a vertical route, or a route with a vertical stem of some point. In this case, it's going to be JSN, and he is going to do a dig across the middle. So you have two guys going across the middle. One is getting a little bit more depth, and Cooper Kupp is going to be running this shallower route. And because of the blitz and because of the linebacker having to follow in man coverage this tight end, who is first going to block and then chip out and release to the outside, that linebacker kind of doesn't have anything to do for a second because he doesn't want the tight end to leak and get an easy first down. So he's kind of just watching him. He knows it's probably a chip and release. So he comes down and bites down even lower, waiting to see how the tight end will react. And if he continues to block, he's going to green dog it, which it means that if your man is in protection, you can go ahead and make the call to blitz or not. And he's going to stay down. He's going to stay beneath the Cooper Kupp crosser. And the second safety, because of what JSN has been able to do, the safety that's not occupied by Rashid Shaheed is going to try and wall off Jackson Smith and Jigba on his deep in route. So you've got two levels coming to the same side of the field. One of them is this deep in that JSN walls off. And in some instances, if it was a zone, or in some man schemes, if it wasn't a blitz, for instance, that other linebacker that ended up blitzing could wall off that drag route by Cooper Kupp. And then you have the tight end one-on-one with a linebacker, and you're probably not going to get the first down, but that also would have been available. In this case, it wasn't. They could just go to Cooper Kupp in one-on-one coverage, and Darnold threw it a little bit behind him, but Kupp was able to reach back, get a first down, force the Rams to use a challenge, or to use a timeout to decide if they wanted to use one more timeout in a challenge that would have been a losing cause. So Cooper Kupp gets it with that very, very shallow route, but it would have been open even if a linebacker had walled off Cooper Kupp, because the tight end, I think it was A.J. Barner, goes to the outside first and then sprints back towards the middle. So the linebacker that would have walled off Cooper Kupp would not have been able to then wall off A.J. Barner, and it would have been a first down. So you basically just had these 3 crossing routes manipulated with different stems and gave Sam Darnold 1 read to make, and he was able to read it. An excellent play call, an excellent read on a night where Sam Darnold was kept clean and threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. This was a play that ended up being the backbreaker. The Rams do get the ball back with 25 seconds, but because that first down was picked up, it allowed the clock to get down to 25 seconds, and there was really no real shot for them outside of a Hail Mary, which they weren't even able to get to because the clock had expired with Puka Nacua being tackled just shy of out of bounds with about 2 seconds left, or else they would have had a chance for a Hail Mary. So it wasn't obviously the final dagger, but it made things a lot more favorable for the Seattle Seahawks. So what does that mean about the Los Angeles Rams? Is Matthew Stafford retiring? They have 2 first-round picks. If that was the case, they could maybe try to talk with the Las Vegas Raiders about getting Fernando Mendoza, or stick and pick with one of them at, wherever they're at, to get Ty Simpson, or bring in a veteran, or stick with Jimmy Garoppolo, who has been in the system and has been a starting quarterback, and a starting quarterback that has taken a team to the Super Bowl, albeit one that he lost. I don't think Matthew Stafford retires, so I don't think you're going to have to worry about it when you play at as high of a level that he did this season. You cannot just hang it up like that. I know we talk about John Elway. Well, he rode off into glory. It's not like he had this MVP-like season. He had an efficient season, but he wasn't breaking the world like Matthew Stafford was this year. Peyton Manning rode off into the sunset. Oh, what a beautiful story. He was really bad statistically and was carried by a Broncos defense. So he got the opportunity to ride off into the sunset, but not with these big numbers. I think Matthew Stafford is going to be itching to come back for some more. And that's probably good news for the Rams' future development plans at quarterback, because if you were forced into a spot in this year's draft class, you'd have to be putting Ty Simpson, who might not be the most pro-ready guy, into the spotlight. And now you can wait until 2027 or 2028, where in 27 specifically, it's going to be a nicer quarterback class, or it's scheduled to be, or projected rather, to be a better quarterback class. So probably some more time with Matthew Stafford. There were the injury concerns coming into the season that his back just was not at the same place that it was going to be. So I think you have to be wary about that. If he does decide to come back, is how will his back hold up? It held up well this year, though, so there's no reason to think that it wouldn't next year, although back injuries can be kind of a different beast and not necessarily be predictable all the time. So that would be something to be concerned about. But otherwise, this team is going to be good again next year. They're built at every single position to find success. They have 2 elite wide receivers. They found an offensive identity this year that they can build off into next year and get new wrinkles for during this offseason. They have a madman offensive whiz at head coach that can aid with that has seen his offenses go through different proliferations throughout the course of his career and have all of those proliferations be successful systems that have responded well to defenses that keep up with the times. But the one thing that they need to do this offseason is get better defensive backs. You cannot be relying on Emmanuel Forbes, on Kobe Durant, as good as he is at times. Akella Weatherspoon was injured in this game. Darius Williams, you cannot rely on those guys in the biggest of spots. And because of communication issues, because of skill issues, the Rams defensive backs had to play outside of system more, and the Seahawks recognized that and took advantage of it. It's not that there aren't ways to mitigate Rashid Shaheed's speed. You put a safety over the top, but then Seattle can respond. And then Seattle finds a way to get you into some miscommunication, so now they have to respond by putting a couple of guys on JSN. And now you're giving yourself less and less options to put deeper into your coverage shells, and you are limiting the amount of coverages that you can run and making it harder to disguise blitzes. All of that stemming from the issue with your defensive back room, both communication-wise and both athletically. So I think that is the major thing to look for this offseason, is do you get Mansour Delane from LSU? Do you go 2 cornerbacks in the first round? Do you get Mansour Delane or Jermon McCoy early and then get Brandon Sissy or Colton Hood late, so that you can really revitalize that cornerback room? Kind of do what the Atlanta Falcons did. Probably don't give a first-round pick, which is why the Rams have 2 first-round picks. Don't give a first-round pick to another team, but kind of do what the Atlanta Falcons did and get a pair of young cornerbacks, or look in free agency. Find cornerbacks that you can trust, that if Chris Shula is there, can trust. And hopefully Chris Shula is there if you're a Rams fan, because his defense can be very good when given the right spots. The adjustments he made were fine, but the weaknesses at cornerback specifically made those adjustments just not enough when it was Klint Kubiak's turn to adjust. And now Sam Darnold, with the Seahawks going to the Super Bowl, is going to be the first member of the class of 2018, just like Drake May is the first member of the class of 2024, to make it to the Super Bowl as a team's starting quarterback. So congratulations to Sam Darnold. The names in that class: Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen. So I think that would be the only one, if you would have told us 3 years ago that it's going to surprise you who the first quarterback from the 2018 class is to lead his team to a Super Bowl appearance. I think the only one that would surprise you more than Sam Darnold at that time would have been Josh Rosen. Yet here we are. Sam Darnold is going to the Super Bowl, and he will take on Drake May and the New England Patriots. Obviously, these two teams have faced in the playoff or in the Super Bowl before, in different iterations of them. Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, in what perhaps was the best Super Bowl of all time, with Malcolm Butler making the play at the goal line, making a name for himself, getting himself a contract, a guy who went from unknown to a pass that is intercepted. We get part 2 11 years later with a different cast and characters, but let's hope that the quality of the game lives up to what it did 11 years ago. We'll talk more about that throughout the course of this week. But we'll move on real quickly to some news updates after talking about the games. What did you think, first of all, about the Seahawks-Rams? Any choke artists that we missed? Any big plays that we didn't talk about that you thought were pivotal from both of those conference championship games? Go ahead and leave them in the comments below. But right now we're going to turn our attention to the head coaching carousel. And the head coaching carousel right now, that includes Mike McCarthy as the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Golden Boy going back to his hometown that he beat in the Super Bowl back in the 2010-11 season. He's going to now be their head coach. An interesting move for me, to say the least, because when you look at the history of Steelers head coaches, and there is a small sample size to choose from because they've only had 3 dating back to the NFL merger, now 4 with Mike McCarthy, but they've always gone defensive guys in their 30s that they expect to be around for a long time. And in this case, you're getting an offensive, maybe quarterback whisper. Jury's out, I think, on that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But you're getting an offensive guy who is 10 years older than the head coach that you had just fired. So it is certainly a departure from the typical as to what the Rooney family does when looking for its next head coach. They had Chuck Noll, defensive coordinator in his 30s. He lasts for 20 plus years. They had Bill Cowher, defensive coordinator in his 30s at the time. Lasts 16, almost 20 years. They get Mike Tomlin, defensive coordinator in his 30s. He lasts nearly 20 years. And now you're going to have a guy that's probably not going to last that long, and kind of abandoning that tradition of long head coach continuity, because if he does last that long, he's going to be in his 80s. But that's not to say that you can't have success with him in the short term. It is just interesting that he is the choice, and it seems like you are just going with the safe route, which is what Mike Tomlin had been for the last 7-8 years, was the safe head coach. It doesn't feel like you're making any major changes there. And the whole 30 defensive coordinator thing, I think, is why a lot of people thought Chris Shula, or even Brian Flores, who is in his early 40s, would have been better fits here for Pittsburgh, but instead they go with Mike McCarthy. I don't love it if I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And I know that's not a hot take. I know that's what most people are saying. I do think it can be successful. I do think Mike McCarthy is a head coach that has had success. I just don't know if the Steelers are in a window where you get a Mike McCarthy head coach. If you want to build this team up, I don't think it's a Super Bowl window right now. I think you are fighting with McCarthy to at best get into the playoffs. Whereas with Dallas, when they hired Mike McCarthy, they had the pieces in place and were a team that could certainly have made a Super Bowl run. Here, I just don't see that with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it seems that while Mike McCarthy is obviously a good coach, has a Super Bowl win, has had success with the Packers, with the Cowboys, and probably is going to have success with the Steelers, I just don't know if his timeline matches up very well with the Steelers' timeline. And I also don't know how big of an offensive guru Mike McCarthy is. You talk about where he's been. He had his first big offensive job with the Kansas City Chiefs and Joe Montana at quarterback. So Joe Montana, you haven't developed him, despite what I think it was Ian Rappaport or Tom Pelissero or Adam Schefter had said, that his career started off developing young quarterbacks in Kansas City. Joe Montana was the quarterback in Kansas City. He was not developing Joe Montana. He was not developing Brett Favre in Green Bay. He did not choose Aaron Rodgers. And in fact, in 2005, as the offensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers, when given the choice and asked for his input on, with the number 1 pick, if the 49ers should select A, Alex Smith, or B, Aaron Rodgers, without hesitation, Mike McCarthy said, Alex Smith. And then he lucks into Aaron Rodgers by becoming the head coach of the Green Bay Packers in 2006. However, this is where you can make the case that he was a quarterback whisperer because Rodgers' mechanics were not great coming out of Cal. And Rodgers, I think, has credited a lot of the fixing of his mechanics, which eventually became close to perfect by the time he became the starting quarterback of the Green Bay Packers in 2008. He credits Mike McCarthy with a lot of the work that he put in with Rodgers to refine those mechanics and get everything down to a science. And that made Aaron Rodgers the most lethal quarterback ever. So there is one quarterback that he certainly helped develop, a quarterback with a lot of talent, a quarterback that he helped to refine that talent. And obviously didn't play a huge role in the development of Dak Prescott, but there are some instances. And one of the points that was made was, the Steelers are doing this so that they can bring Aaron Rodgers back. I saw legitimate NFL insiders say that was a big reason because they thought it would bring Aaron Rodgers back. And they said, in fact, declaratively, these insiders, not as a report, but instead as a declarative tweet, this opens the door up for Aaron Rodgers to come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I am thinking, do we not remember the article that came out about the tension that existed at the end of the Green Bay tenure with Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy and how Aaron Rodgers essentially forced McCarthy out of there? Maybe they're on better terms now, but I don't think those better terms extend to, I want to be your head coach again, or, I want you to be my head coach again. I think, if anything, this lessens the chances significantly that if Aaron Rodgers does not retire, I think he is not the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And maybe he's with Miami, or maybe he's with Minnesota. But he's not going to be the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and if he is, it will be a circus for the 2026 Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think now if you are Pittsburgh, you are hoping that it is not Aaron Rodgers, because I think that has the strong potential of being a disaster. Real quick, some other head coaching updates. Arizona has a couple of guys that they've interviewed twice. If you view those guys as the favorites, they are Anthony Campanile, the defensive coordinator of the Jaguars, and Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator of the Dolphins. So getting Floridan defensive coordinators named Anthony seems to be the priority for the Arizona Cardinals. The Cleveland Browns have people left and right dropping out of their head coach search, most notably and most recently, Grant Udinski, the wonder kid from Jacksonville. Right now, they have 2 interviews with Jim Schwartz, with Todd Monken, and with Rams quarterback coach Nate Scheelhaas. And the big rumor there right now is that Grant Udinski dropped out because Cleveland has a flight. Some of the flight trackers are seeing that a flight is going to Cleveland so that they can make Ned Scheelhaas their head coach. And I haven't checked Twitter, so maybe since pressing record, that has in fact happened. And if it was, we will update you post-haste. But that is what the signs are pointing to at this moment, is that Nate Scheelhaas will be the next head coach of the Cleveland Browns. None of that has been confirmed. Those are just some of the rumors. For Buffalo, they still haven't gotten to their second round of interviews, but Phillip Rivers decided to drop out and return to the high school coaching ranks. The Bills so far have have interviewed once, Joe Brady, Anthony Lynn, Brian Dable, Lou Anarumo, Grant Udinski, Anthony Weaver, and then Broncos quarterback coach David Webb. And it looks like the Raiders' 3 finalists right now, barring anything else, would be Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator of the Panthers, Davis Webb, and Joe Brady. That is where your head coaching carousel stands at the moment. Meanwhile, the Green Bay Packers are bringing Jonathan Gannon in as the defensive coordinator. He was the old Arizona Cardinals head coach. I really like this move for the Packers, which means I hate it at a human level because I'm a big Vikings fan. But he is a guy that can create a lot of simulated pressures, and I think that is going to take advantage of what Micah Parsons can do, because it's going to get him a lot more one-on-one looks with the simulated rushes to confuse the offensive line and sometimes bringing the extra guys as well. He did a really good job of that. And in fact, during his time in Arizona, gave Los Angeles basically the game plan to beat Minnesota in the playoffs. Los Angeles just had the better personnel than Arizona at the time and were able to take better advantage of it than the Cardinals were in the regular season. So Jonathan Gannon, in that way, going to be a good pickup there. Zach Robinson, I don't know if he is going to be a good offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Things could get a little bit stale, but he does have some creative run calls. But we'll see if that was all a product of their offensive line coach and run game quarter, Dwayne Ledford, or if that was truly the brainchild of Zach Robinson. So those are your defensive and offensive coordinator updates as well. Here's what it looks like for the rest of the week for us here on the Grey Duck NFL Show. We are going to have a Super Bowl preview next week. We're going to talk about some more head coaching news once it hits later on this week. 2 shows a week until next season starts, but the Super Bowl is right around the corner. Thanks for watching the Grey Duck NFL Show.